a lot of humour in my
Yes,
trainings.
yeah.
I mean, I'm from Liverpool, and a lot of comedians come from
You don't sound
Liverpool.
Liverpool-ish.
Oh, I can if I want to. I can talk in like Scouse if I want to.
Yeah, right.
Let's hear it. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
I've got a Scouser on my programme this week and it's really coming back for me.
Yes. I used to watch Harry Einfeld, and he had a Scouser skit where, at eight, calm down.
Yeah.
And that's
very good.
Good morning, good day, good evening. This is Conor and Kallum with the Unplugged number 42 with world-renowned international author and NLP master trainer, Sue Knight, who is streaming all the way from France.
Thank you for being here with us, Sue. Sue Knight is a renowned NLP master trainer and a high-performance coach with over 30 years of experience in the industry. She is the author of the influential book NLP at Work, which has been translated into over 27 languages, and the NLP and Leadership Manual. Sue has been honored with numerous awards for all her contributions to NLP and is celebrated for innovative training programs that have transformed lives and businesses around the world. Her approach combines practical insights with deep expertise, making her a respected leader in the NLP community. It's an absolute honor to have you here today. Sue, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. It's always interesting to hear introductions. It's like what people think I am, but thank you. Oh, where's he gone?
Cal's back.
I also thought it's interesting. I was just thinking it's number 42 episode for you podcast.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've ever read that book, The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, science fiction book, and they said, what's the meaning, what's the secret of the universe? And the answer was 42. I thought, that's pretty good. I like this number.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was a good, and it's a good movie as well.
Yeah. Oh, I never saw the movie. I saw read the books.
Yeah.
Nice one. So thank you very much for joining in. It's about 10:30 at night, I think, for you, maybe even later.
It is. Yes, later.
And you've been training all day. Have you been training all day?
I've had quite a few Zoom meetings and training. It's online training, and I do that just for a couple of hours. It's a nice sort of balance, really. But I have had a busy day, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for being able to carve out some time to spend with us and our community. As Cal mentioned earlier, most of our listeners are in the personal, professional development industry, NLP trained, and they're very curious about early days. So you've certainly been in the industry, and you've developed your name over many years, and you've earned quite a lot of respect in the industry as well. Could you share with us a little bit about how did you find yourself in the NLP industry, and what was the trigger or motivation to want to step into it as a full-time career?
Wow, there's some presuppositions there, but nevertheless,
There are.
Yeah, there are. It felt like kind of one of those freak sliding doors moments, that they're deciding to do it, because I was working in the corporate world, and I decided to leave. I had a choice of going into management or sticking. I was doing training then, and I didn't want to go into management. I wanted to stay training. Anyway, it was a prompt I needed. It was kind of the push I needed to decide to go independent. And as part of setting up my own business, I thought, well, I need to write some stuff, I need to write handouts and things like that. And I enrolled on a writing course, a creative writing course.
Okay.
And coincidentally, on that course, there was a writer left to his own devices. He probably couldn't have taught us. He wasn't a teacher or a trainer, but there was somebody with him, a man called Roy Johnson. And I didn't know what the process was, but what I discovered subsequently was that Roy Johnson had modelled, in NLP terms, this writer. And so he had unpacked the writing strategies, and he was teaching us those. So I was just kind of intrigued by this relationship, this connection, the way these two were working. And it was a kind of after hours chat with Roy Johnson. And I was so impressed by the way he trained and the way he listened and the way I just thought, this guy's incredible. Something about the way he's working that I want to have, I want to learn.
Mm.
And it turned out, he'd studied NLP, and I thought, that's it, I'm enrolling. And it was on the basis of his example that he told me there was only this one training school, UK training centre, that was running programs in London. And I enrolled, and that was it. I enrolled for a year, at first stage.
And from that point onwards, it became your career. You moved away from the
Well,
corporate
there was a
world.
lot of steps between
Okay.
that and that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was quite weird at first. I'd missed the first module of this course, and pretty well everybody on the program, they were therapists or counselors, and I'd just come from the corporate world. And
What's
I'd
that?
missed the first module, which is all about rapport. And I thought all these creepy people were all sort of mirroring each other's behavior in the coffee lounge. And I happened to pick one of the oddest people. I think everybody would agree. And I, did the classic sort of question, what do you do? And he said, I sit in an office and I watch the clouds go by. I thought, oh God, I've joined the Moonies or something. I thought that this is dreadful. But I stuck with it. And I was at that crossroads my life about, do I stick with this independence? What do I do? And I was just bowled over by the trainers who presented on that program. I mean, I'd had that experience with Roy Johnson, and then they had there was some core trainers, and then they had some different guests for these long weekends. And I'd done a lot of training, and these people, these American trainers, were just so outrageous, really, and so different to anything that I'd experienced before.
Yes.
And I thought, I'm having this, I'm going for this. And it was their style as much. I mean, I was I didn't know what the hell NLP was. I didn't
Yes.
even know for about 2 years. I thought, there's some people here who can explain it, some of the students. I thought, I haven't really got an idea what it is, but I'm loving it. So it was kind of a bizarre start.
And
And then I went on and I did the next year's training, which it wasn't called practitioner master practice, it was called advanced, I think. And I did that, and that was profound. It was just an incredible experience. But I hadn't decided then. I started gradually to use it in the work I was doing with corporate organizations, very gradually. It was 6 years later before I ever ran an
that was
open.
what I was going to ask. Yes.
Yeah.
So whilst you were learning NLP, you were still in the corporate world, and you were, I guess, blending it with your corporate life.
I was running programs for corporate organizations, but doing it independently. And just gradually, not to a great extent, but just gradually, there were some key moments. There were some key moments when I started to change my style. And I used to drive up to Cumbria to do a lot of courses in the north of England. And I used to have a boot full of manuals. I thought, I'm going to have to read all this stuff, and I'm going to have to look at it each night. And I remember there was one moment with one group, and they didn't want to be there. They'd been sent by their management. I didn't particularly want to be with them because they didn't want to be there. And then it just clicked. They've got everything. I don't need to look at the books. It's all in them and in how we interact. And that was a real step change for me to realize I just work with what they tell me and, with what I notice in them. And I think that was the beginning of a very big shift.
Yeah, that seems like a step that a lot of people who, especially those who've come to the trainings in the past, who come from a corporate background, do have a little bit of a I guess a challenging time with making that transition or bringing some of the ideas from NLP into corporate life, because they're wondering, how will this be received? Will people respond well to it? Will it seem a little bit too nebulous for some people? And that's an interesting point. What you notice is that everything's in them. And
absolutely,
although it's still not fully denominalized for us and turned into a process, I'd love to hear you talk more about that process and how some of our listeners may be able to model that, because I think you're scratching at something very, very deep here, is that NLP is about what's inside a human being and how to bring that excellence out of them.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
can you talk about maybe unpacking that process a little bit? Because I'm sure there was something that you did step by step to first of all, for you to realize that, and second of all, to help bring that out of the people you're working with.
Oh, it really was step by step. But that was a particular moment when I suddenly realized, that I was relying on notes and scripts to that point. And I thought, and, one guy, I said, why are you here? And he said something like, well, I don't want to be here. He said, I'd rather be on my allotment digging potatoes. I thought, oh, shit, this is how I'm going to go in. And then I don't know how it got, the conversation unfolded, and some of them just happened to say, it's just one of those things that started to unfold, and they started to talk about the fact that they went dancing on a Friday night, and we had this conversation, and it wasn't as fully experiential as it would be with the things I do today. But I suddenly realized I could connect with these guys in a way that I hadn't really done before. I was always relying on getting the stuff across before. And getting into the corporate world, I realized the limitations were in me. I used to think, well, how the hell am I going to get people to walk a timeline, or something like that? And I thought, they're going to think I'm crackers. And then I realized a lot of these things, the limitation wasn't in them, it was in me. And that was that took a while, but that came over time. Yeah.
So with your curriculum that you were due to teach, so with corporate trainings, you have an itinerary often, and you have to deliver certain pieces of information, and then you tick everyone off as being competent or compliant with learning it, and then the cycle continues. How were you able to?
Oh, that sounds so alien now to hear you say that.
Yes, well, that's
Oh.
Kallum and I obviously have been in the NLP industry for a very long time, so but also we do corporate trainings, and getting that blend, that mix of free thinking in a way, combined with this is what I'm here to teach, and this is what the management expects me to deliver.
I don't do that.
Not anymore, or maybe
No.
not even in the past.
Well, it did in the past.
With this class, the turning point as such, how were you able to still deliver the content that was required and pull that or call it creativity or spontaneity out of the class?
Oh, it was a real kind of gray phase when it was mixed together, when I would feel a duty to put an agenda up somewhere.
Yes. Yes.
And then, it progressed to, well, I'll put the agenda up, but I won't stick to it. But it's there, so if somebody said, where's the agenda? I'll go, oh, okay, well, let me write it up. But I thought, well, they were happy because there was something up, but I didn't follow it.
Sure.
It was a very gradual process. And I remember when I did start to teach some of the open programs, I do things like well-formed outcomes. And I thought, shit, I've done it this way before. I've done this way many times before. I thought, I don't want to do this. I don't want to keep doing the same thing. And that was a big step to think, let's just go with, what's in the room and patterns that I'm witnessing in people. And it was a very uncomfortable step, that letting go of, oh, I've got this way of doing things too. And I find that's the big step, and I'm training trainers now. And my work is based on the learning cycle. It's experiential. Start with experience all the way through. And not to get people, but for people to trust that. I mean, I think it takes a lot of structured knowledge to do that. You've got to know your stuff really, really well. And then to have them take that step to trust. I think trust plays such a big part. To trust that, once you engage people and you study them, you don't have to be right, in everything. But you've just got such a different dynamic in the room when you work that way. And I recognize, it took me a long time to get to that stage, but a whole point of modeling is people, we can accelerate that process for people, so they don't have to go through 30 years of struggle to get there. So yeah.
Yeah,
I think
yeah. After you, Cal.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a part of your brilliance, is that level of trust that you enabled yourself to have. And I think there's a couple of points that I picked up then that you said you have to know your stuff. So the first step is definitely you need to know your way around the content. You need to know and understand how that relates to human behavior and communication. And you need to be able to really be confident with that. And that's what allows the trust. And I think also what allows the trust is that experience through trainers training, when you finally realize that you can't possibly hold all of this information in your conscious mind and do everything consciously. And eventually you have to.
You can't?
Well, I mean, I'm yet to see it, and I'm happy to be proven wrong. But most of the information that I've experienced when I'm training is delivered to me from my unconscious mind. So it's typically that relationship between the conscious and unconscious mind that allows me to then consciously teach it. But you have to then give up that, control of the conscious mind to trust the unconscious mind's going to deliver the right pieces of
God, you're putting me
information.
into a trance with this language at the moment.
And it's late at night.
Remember, it's late at night for me. I mean, I'm going to go there.
Throw in a that's right, and then.
So yeah, for me, that's definitely the secondary part of that is the trust of your unconscious mind, and that it's going to deliver up the right information at the right time. So
it's interesting you say right information. I mean, I challenge that. You've put a lot of emphasis on information there. I think what I'm trusting is that I can use all that I've learned to spot patterns in people. That's key. So it's not so. Now, to be able to, if you like, unpack those patterns, I rely on all I've learned about, things like language patterns and behavioral patterns and clues and all of that. I don't think it was interesting you saying information. I thought I don't think information. I think about patterns in people and being able to. So I'm not like waiting for moments to get stuff out. I'm waiting for moments to go, wow, that what this person's doing is having this effect on me, and what is it, that's doing that. So it's a constant study, really. That's how I would describe it.
Excellent.
And then,
I guess that's the experiential part of it, right?
Well, that's pretty well everything. Yeah, I believe. I say to people, the technical definition of NLP is a study of a structure of subjective experience. There's some big hints in that, isn't that? Experience. It's not a presentation of theory. It's a study of experience.
Yes. Yeah.
That's key. And yet I think that gets lost in some areas.
I think people who've been in the industry for a long time, when you're getting to whatever that level is, the theory of it, I think people really grab onto, and they grab onto it because they love the theory of it. And then when they practice it enough, then it becomes that experiential. In the years of watching people in this industry for a very, very long time, when people learn NLP for the very first time, it's experiential, and it has to be experiential. In fact, that's what NLP is all about, in my opinion, all about the results. The theory's superfluous unless you're getting the results. So it's about the results. And when a lot of the newbies came through the doors, it was very much a theory-based learning that they would articulate in their mind, because they hadn't yet had an opportunity to practice everything in all situations or all contexts of their life. And watching that evolve, it's the people who finished 5-year master trainer program, for example, when that was being run, they had this air of certainty and confidence about them regarding NLP, and the theory wasn't necessarily as important as the focus on the results or helping someone transform. And how they got there, they were okay with maybe veering off the path a little bit to get there, as opposed to being stringent on making sure that I do everything by the book. And I think that often comes with the
that's
experience.
to me that's not NLP. I say to people that getting things wrong is right.
Mm,
It's the willingness to experiment that's
correct.
key,
Yes.
and to be willing. Bandler said, didn't it? It's an attitude of openness, naivety. I mean, that's an interesting word to bring into the corporate world. It's an attitude of naivety and curiosity and openness and responsiveness to feedback. So for me, it's all about awareness. You talked, Callum, about bringing the unconscious to the conscious. I think giving people the opportunity to become consciously aware of what they're doing, that's the biggest thing. Once they, I've studied a number of things alongside NLP, and I studied Feldenkrais, which is awareness through movement. And interesting, because Moishe Feldenkrais, who was the founder of that, I think he knew Milton Erickson, and I don't know whether Bandler got involved in that connection. But he said, once you know what you're doing, you can do what you want.
Yes.
And it's knowing what you know what you're doing. And most people don't know what they're doing. They don't know the patterns that they're running. And that's I think they get that, then they have a choice.
And in your opinion, is it simply practice? Is it failing forward fast? How does one get to that point where they know it so well that they don't have to know it?
Where they know it so well that they don't have, like as a trainer, you mean?
I guess so,
They know it.
yes. Could be trainer level.
So what was the question again? Ask me again.
How, in your experience, how does someone know within themselves that they can, like I said before, veer off the track when they know the information so well that they don't have to follow the rules as such?
Oh, interesting. Interesting things. The track and the rules.
Because I'm thinking most people stay within the lines when they're learning something new. Because most people, when they learn something new, and this is obviously vast generalization, and based on my experience, most people, when they learn something new, and probably myself, to be honest, is that they generally like to stay within the track because they want to make sure they're doing it right. And when you do it right, I think those micro wins by doing it right builds the confidence that, oh, I'm doing it correctly. And then
Well,
at
I
what
think
point does it tip over and go, actually, it doesn't really matter how I do it as long as I get the result?
I think I really embody that from the beginning of any training, that
You do, yeah.
there isn't a right. It's the right is the curiosity and having the tools to study what's happening. That's the key. And having the willingness, if you're working with other people, to raise people's awareness of the patterns that you're able to recognize in them, and it's to such an extent that they begin to recognize them for themselves, that they make that choice. So I mean, even when I'm working in the corporate world now, I mean, I go and do my thing my way, and I know that it's generally very refreshing for people.
Yes.
That, like, I did one recently, and I think probably most of the team sessions they'd had before would have had slides, and they would have had an agenda and so on. And I think even in preparation for this, I met some people one-on-one online, and somebody said, just some advice for you. I think you should at least have an activity where we get involved somewhere. And I thought, this guy's got no idea what's coming his way. Because as soon as I start, I'd say, turn to the person next to you and, and find this out. And that's an experience. And it's not the finding out. It's like exploring, how did they go about that? What choices did they make? So I'll do that right from the beginning. It's one of the things that probably sets people a bit, intentionally off balance, who come to training. Yeah.
So as you were talking, I was thinking of the word success, and that, do you use that word in terms of what word do you use when someone knows they've achieved the result? So if it's all experiential and you're looking for the patterns, how does someone know that they've achieved the outcome, or how do you quantify that?
Are you talking about, when you're saying someone, are you talking about somebody
A
who's
student,
learning this?
yeah,
A
a
student.
pupil, yeah, a student, a someone in the let's stick to an NLP
Okay.
training.
Okay.
If yeah,
So if I think about, the training I'm doing this week,
Mm.
success, if you like, and I'm not always going to use that word.
I was going to say, I didn't pick up that you were a success user in terms of that
No.
label, but it was the one that came to my mind. How with the blend of experience, high level experiential learning, and the outcome of the exercise or process that they're doing, if we're able to be a little bit creative, maybe creative, I'm not too sure is the right word. Is it the success of the outcome? How do we know when we've done it correctly? Is there such a thing as doing it correctly?
That's a good question, isn't it? I'm just thinking of a session this week, and it was based on the logical levels.
Mhm.
For that session and what they do with that and what they learn about that subsequently, for me, a marker is that they can recognize what level they're operating at, and they can recognize what level of the people are coming from, that they can categorize in that way, that they can differentiate. That ability to differentiate is really significant. And subsequently, that they can be flexible with those levels, and they demonstrate that. They recognize that if what I'm doing is not working, they can shift levels, for example.
Yes.
They've got so many more, operations in the tote, to use that technical term, than they had previously. And, for me, if you like, a real marker is that people come back, like somebody came back and said, I was talking to my father last night, and I realized, that he's talking about himself, and his identity, and I've been telling him to do stuff, and then I acknowledged his identity, and the whole, our way of relating has just changed. That for me is success.
Okay. Yes.
And success with, when I get into modeling, which is what the master practice is dedicated to, well, success is that they have identified a measurable effect that they wish to be able to reproduce with consistency, and that they demonstrate it. They've got measures of success for that. They know what the evidence is, that they're able to replicate that excellence, however they define it, and they can impart it to other people. I mean, that's a real test, I think, for people's ability to use all the stuff.
Yes. And when you are in those environments and someone is learning how to model, for example, you mentioned modeling there.
Yeah.
Are you looking at what the outcome when you successfully model someone? How do you quantify if that's is it just replicating the behavior? Is it replicating the results? How would you
result.
quantify successful modeling?
Replicating the effect, the desirable effect. They
Perfect.
they get the same results. I mean, when that first training I attended in London, I said,
Is this
I
the
was
practice,
blown
like
away.
the level one that you spoke about, the level one
Yes.
training where the American trainings came out and
Yeah. And, the first trainer that, I think it was the first trainer that came on stage, because it was a stage, it was about 100 people in this group. And he came on the stage. And again, like my experience with Boy Johnson, the guy I mentioned before, he was like, wow, I feel like this guy's talking to me. He's talking to me personally, but there's 100 people in the room. And, I think I said that at break time. I said, God, I thought he's talking to me. It's like, and they go, no, he's talking to me, and somebody else, he's talking to me. And I thought, God, that's an incredible ability to be able to connect that way. And I didn't know, about what modeling was at that stage. I didn't know what NLP was, but I thought, I want to do that. I want to be able to have that effect. So, and for me, once I got to that ability where I can do that, I can achieve that effect. That's the success. I didn't do that consciously.
Hi there, this is Conor and Kallum from Connekt Coaching. Hope you are enjoying the Unplugged Podcast. Nothing lights us up more than seeing businesses thrive, especially in uncertain times. We have 32 combined years of doing nothing but mentoring and training businesses from around the globe in order to increase their revenue and thrive in uncertain times. So what we would like to do is share with you a little bit about what we've discovered over the last 32 years.
We've created this amazing business model called the Forever Business Model, and we want to give it to you for free. All you need to do is jump down into the description below. There's a link there called Steal Our Forever Business Model. Click on the link. There's a 9-minute video that you can watch where we unpack everything you need to know to implement it in your business right away.
I mean, I was paid every bit of attention I could to all the trainers, but him in particular, till eventually I thought, yeah, I can do this now. I can have that same effect on people. If people say, I really felt like you're talking to me, Sue, I think, yeah, got it.
Do you remember who that trainer was? Was it Ernest
Oh, I
Rossi? Because
do.
Ernest Rossi used to come out to the UK.
It was Jean Early.
Who?
Jean Early.
I've never.
He went his own way, really.
Okay.
He trained with Grinder and Bandley. He was in this sort of
In the first Meta
early
Monsters.
bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he moved, he's American, but he went quickly. He really launched it in Europe. So I think he was in Austria, Germany, first of all. So he started trainings in Europe, and then he was the core trainer at this. So people like Ian, I don't know if you know Ian McDermott,
I've heard of Ian.
Joseph,
Yes.
Joseph Connor. They all trained with him. We all trained with him at this school.
I've been in this industry for a long time and I've never heard of that. Could you spell that for me?
Gene, and early, like early to bed, which is
Gene
what I'm
Early.
not like.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for staying up again.
I learned a lot.
All right.
There's been a couple. He still is. I haven't had so much contact with him in recent years, but he was a huge influence and mentor for me.
Okay.
And then the other person was Frank Farrelly, who was the master of provocative therapy. He was huge.
Okay. Wow, that would have been quite. I've never heard of Frank.
Oh,
Frank
you've got a treat in store.
Okay.
I mean, Bandler studied with Frank Farrelly, and some people, and Frank Farrelly, sometimes talked about that.
Okay.
Bandler's I suspect he was provocative before he spent time with Frank Farrelly.
Yes.
Frank Farrelly, if the other guys blew my minds, Frank Farrelly just exploded it.
Wow, thank you for bringing him up. Cal, have you ever heard of Frank or Gene?
No, I've just quickly looked Gene up in the background here while you guys are talking. He doesn't look familiar. I haven't heard of him or Frank, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about Frank and his provocative way of doing therapy, because I think it's fascinating. Yeah, the type of responses that gets, because it is sometimes just what people need to get them off the mark.
Could you share a little bit about how you utilize it today?
Provocative therapy, how I use it or what it is?
Well, maybe what it is first, and then how you've incorporated it into your trainings.
It's almost like, how do I not? It's taken over. I think since he died, he's channeling himself through me. I think it was. I'll tell you, he originally. I mean, you should read Frank Farrelly's. There's one key book, and it's called Provocative Therapy, and you can read the history of his work. And he realized he had something, that really worked. But he started just telling some of these very extreme patients in, I think, where was it, Minnesota hospital that he worked for, and he was given some of the extreme people that other people haven't been able to tackle. And I think in some cases he just told them how it was, instead of playing by the rules, as you would say, he just told. And he realized, And he kind of called them out. And he said, some of these guys that were in these mental hospitals had the therapist around their little finger. He said they were smarter than the therapist.
Yeah.
And he would call them out. And he said he realized this really worked. They really noted and reacted to this. And they were going to call it protest therapy at first. Was to get people to protest, because when because of convictions sort of thing. Anyway, it was eventually changed to provocative therapy with the definition of provoking a healing and a learning response. So it's about taking people to an edge, to their Achilles heel, finding, where the Achilles heel is. And like pushing lovingly. He said it's absolutely key that you do this with a learning intention. It's not, it's not a game. You do it with a learning intention and lovingly. The rapport is key. Although you might, sort of break rapport on the surface, because people are going to be uncomfortable at some point. So that you push them where they're taking themselves, to the point where they retaliate.
There's an example from his book that says, that the client might say, I'm a failure. And the therapist would respond, you're right. You should definitely quit now before it gets worse.
Exactly. Are you familiar with the drama triangle?
Tell us more.
Oh, God. Well, in transaction analysis, one of the frameworks that's introduced is this concept of the drama triangle, where, some people play the victim, and they seemingly want help, but they don't ask for it clearly. And that hooks in the rescuers, people love to help people out, especially people they think who need help, but they haven't asked for it. And then there's the persecutor, people who blame others and criticize. And I mean, it's the basis of most films, plays, whatever, theatrical productions. Once you get into one role, you're going to go around the others if you get into the drama triangle. And it's the most efficient way of stepping outside, or bypassing the drama triangle. So if somebody says, oh, I'm a failure, you might get some people, certainly I think young new coaches, might think, no, I'll reassure you that you're actually a success. Well, with provocative therapy, exactly as you say, you go, yeah, you probably are. If I were you, I'd give up now. I remember Frank saying to somebody, not all the seeds in the garden bloom. Maybe you're one of those that just doesn't bloom. And people go, well, hang on a minute. So they come back on that. That's the intentions, that they come back and go, well, just a minute, maybe I will. No, come on. The chances are pretty slim.
I love that.
You'd have to have rapport, because if someone, not all seeds in the garden blossom or bloom, and then someone takes it on, and oh, you know what? You're right. I'm a failure.
It's the way you do it that's key.
Okay.
Rapport,
I think you said is.
Or the way you say, if I said to somebody, you're a failure, you're not going to make it. But if I go, yeah, not going to do it. Like cats and dogs can signal that it's play fight.
Yes.
Well, you do the same with provocative. You show this is mischievous, this is flirty, this is.
Yeah, this charm was the word that came to mind for me. You do it with a bit of
zing.
I like that. That's and
it's so important, because like taking the trainings, you probably experienced this. People go, well, what should I do in this situation? What's the answer to this? Well, there is no answer, is there? It's like they have to experiment and find out for themselves. Or they say, well, how long have we got for this exercise? And that somebody's really attached to doing things precisely. So I might say 5 minutes and 40 seconds.
Yes.
And they go, and then they get the awareness of what they're doing.
Borderline sarcasm.
Oh, it's not even borderline. Come on, it's full on.
It's good. Okay, it's complete sarcasm. Yes.
It's interesting the transform. Sorry to interrupt. it's interesting the transformations that they talk about with the drama triangle here. It talks about the victim being the poor me, persecutor, it's all your fault, and the rescuer, let me save you. But it talks about how they can shift into the victim becoming the creator and taking responsibility, the persecutor becoming the challenger, offering constructive feedback, and this rescuer becoming the coach who supports without enabling. So I think this is a wonderful distinction for people to be aware of, especially like you said, for brand new coaches, young coaches, and it's a body of works that we didn't touch on with our training. So it's fascinating. I think it provides a whole nother level of flexibility with therapy.
Oh, it does. And I would say, even from those definitions you've given, when you go down the provocative route, you know, you might rescue, but with ridiculous suggestions. You know, so you kind of exaggerate. You exaggerate the roles. You'd exaggerate the patterns in the meta model, and the exaggeration, the caricature, is what. I mean, one intention is to get people to laugh at themselves, because once they laugh at themselves, they've dissociated from, you know, being emotionally caught up in it.
The subject.
So they've stepped back, and it just changes the whole thing. You know, it's like, what was a good question somebody gave me recently? Somebody had said to them, they was talking about something that was holding them back, and somebody said, how long have you held that ridiculous belief for? I was like, what? You know, ridiculous. But they started to be amused at that. And of course, in the process, it put a chink in that belief to the point that they dropped it.
I used to always hear someone says I said they say I have anxiety. I would ask, how long have you had anxiety for? They say, oh, 20 years. I say, well, you must be very good at it. Like,
Yes, exactly. That's
guess
exactly
so.
it.
Okay, yes. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So those two things working in combination with one another, the provocative, but also understanding the drama triangle and using them as keys together is a powerful
and knowing all the patterns in NLP. I mean, you know, you get all the language patterns, for example, and the behavioral patterns. Everything works together at the end of the day, doesn't it? Really, whatever.
I have noticed that with the new coaches, when you can see it, we would call it the rapport vortex. And what would happen is that someone would be pouring may not, tears are optional, but they're sort of getting very personal, and then the coach is leaning in with them, almost on the same level, and we have two unresourceful people trying to solve the problem within the confines of the problem. Because they want to help them, which is admirable, I guess. But are you actually helping the client if you're in the problem with the client,
or becoming a part of the problem?
The one thing, I would do, demonstrations, and I don't typically teach it that way. I found my own way with this eventually. But he would sit back, and he would wear like some cowboy tie. He had all those cowboy ties with the big stones on. Yeah, and he'd sit back. So he never sat forward and he'd go, totally different style with different people. But, on one occasion he sat back and he went, okay, what's the issue? And they said, we to tell you the issue. He went, well, is it interesting? Is it important? They said, well, it's important to me and interesting. He said, yeah, but is it going to be interesting to me? And they went, well, I don't know. I think so. He said, oh, go on then. You think? And it was.
And it worked. That's the.
Oh yeah, he was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
It would. It's almost like a pattern interrupt. It would change. It would.
Oh yes.
Everyone else that they would talk to would be sucked into that vortex.
Exactly. Total pattern interrupt.
Yes.
And so, is this something that you have brought in to your trainings, and is this like I guess a part of your trainings now, or is when I'm thinking more,
it's a part of me.
Part of you.
And people are modeling you, so they're modeling.
It's a big part of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of a big part of how I work with people. So I think there's a lot of humor in my trainings.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm from Liverpool, a lot of comedians come from
you don't sound Liverpool-ish.
Oh, I can if I want to. I can talk and write Scouse if I want to.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I've got a Scouser on my program this week, and it's really coming back for me.
Yes. I used to watch Harry Einfeld, and he had a Scouser skit where at eight, calm down.
Yeah.
And that's
very good.
That's
You get better
my
than
new
I do.
Scouser.
He
Wearing
is
red
Irish, so he
Adidas
can tap into the
tracksuits.
Liverpool.
Yes. Yeah. And
But your
there
accent's
is
changed.
there is
Moved
something
south.
about Liverpool. There is something in Liverpool, you know, where people do speak out. They do say things directly to
They're
you.
very-
So it very much fits with that.
Mm.
Yeah, I remember asking once, but I hadn't been in Liverpool for a while, and a long time ago, and I was going to take my sons on a tram or on a bus because they hadn't been on one before. You know, they'd always been driven around in a car. And I tapped this woman on the shoulder in the bus queue and I said, "Does this bus go to Notty Ash?" I came from Notty Ash. And I said, "Does this bus go to Notty Ash?" She said, "Good God, love." She said, "You can walk from here." I thought, "Oops."
It is a provocative area. It's famous for the Liverpool kiss. So I guess that's about as
Yes.
provocative as you can get.
I think the kiss is more Scottish. They do the Glasgow
The
kiss.
Glasgow
Is
kiss. I
it
heard
the
that one as
Glasgow?
well, yeah.
Okay.
Your accent has certainly moved south over the years, I think.
Yeah,
And
yeah, working in different countries.
I was
you
going to
know,
say, speaking of going,
working in India and places, I had
yes.
to learn to say things clearly
Mm.
and say things in different ways. And I think I never intentionally lost the accent, but it's happened over the years.
So speaking, you travel a lot. You teach online trainings, but you also, I think
Yeah.
you said Italy. You're obviously, so you moved from the UK to France, or is this a holiday home and your base
No, I
is?
live here now. Yes, I'm a
Okay.
resident in France. Yeah,
Whereabouts in France are you?
in the southwest, in the
Oh,
Dordogne.
Beautiful.
Yes, it is beautiful.
One of my favorite, this is a bit off topic, cooking shows is Rick Stein. And the reason why I like
Oh,
Rick
yeah.
Stein cooking shows is because there's no commercialization of it. And it's like probably Rick Stein and one person with a camera, and that's it. And he talks to the locals and he gets the local produce. But one of my favorite series of his is when he went all the way through France on the
Yes.
canals, and it was absolutely stunning, the scenery and the food. So I
Yeah.
guess what am I? I'm talking myself into going to the south of France and experiencing
You
that.
could come and do a provocative coaching session.
Yeah, I could. I'll actually be in the UK early April. Actually, so I'm toying with doing a little bit of extra travel whilst I'm there.
Wow.
And speaking of travel for you, though, you travel to Italy, you run trainings in Italy, India. So India, you've been going to India, I think, for a while. I read on your profile.
For 16 years.
Now, India is huge. Do you have a favorite location?
Yes, because I go in the European winter months. Well, it's also winter months in India. So I go to the south of India, to Kerala.
I've never heard of.
And Kerala is a very tropical
Okay.
state in India. If you went to the north, I go December, January, February
Okay.
time. If you went at those times, it would be cold in Delhi, you know, very cold and foggy probably. Kerala is tropical and it's a very independent state. I went first of all to its neighbor, which was Tamil Nadu, and I went there first of all. And then just for a number of
Wow.
reasons, I
Okay.
moved to Kerala, and that's where I run with my Indian colleagues. That's where I run trainings. India's a fantastic place to work.
It's another one on the list. I was an
Oh.
expat in Southeast Asia, but I've never been to India. I love the Goan curry vindaloo, but this is on the south Kerala. So are you in Kochi? Kochi?
Yeah, very near Kochi, yes.
Okay.
And Chennai, there's a strip of land called Vipin Island, and that's where I'm based. And it's remarkable because it's not a major tourist spot. But I went there because I was working with this company, this team in India. They had a business manager whose family lived there, and I said, "Look, I'll come back to India if I'm by the coast, because in the cities it was pretty toxic at the time." And I stayed at one point on this coast, on the other coast, and it was fantastic, and this sea and this wind and the clean air. And I said, "I'll come back if you find me somewhere on the coast." And went to this place called Chennai, which is a pretty small place on this strip of land, and which has got a very, a couple of bridges over to the mainland. We've been doing programs there so long now, and I send people out to go and find excellence, in people locally, and go and engage with people and find out their stories. So people, and when they go to, say a cafe there, or a side shack, the people on the programs that have learned, to be good to people, to be kind with them, to be considerate, to be compassionate, to build rapport. And people know now,
I was going to
they
ask,
go,
do they know? Oh, here's a Sue Knight.
they know,
Here's an NLP
they go,
student.
Stu Knight's people are in town. It's phenomenal. They go, the NLP people are back,
Yes.
because they get treated so nicely, so well in comparison with how they might get treated by other people. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's become like, this little place has become like an NLP center without
A
them
hub.
realizing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
hub. Yeah.
And who do those trainings attract? Is it people from all over the world, or is it people who are local to the Indian region?
It's people from India. It's usually, so I have my Indian colleague Ramesh. He runs training. So he trained with myself and a man, Ashok, who took me to India in the first place. So he runs trainings now all around India. So his delegates, come to do usually the more advanced training with us together. And then people come from the rest of the world. It's tremendous to have that mix, because the Indian people, for Indians, a teacher is a god, basically. It's like God. It's on a par with God. And they have incredible respect for teachers. It can be a challenge sometimes, and I have to encourage them to ask questions, at first. Once they get going, there's no stopping them. But they won't be cynical, or they won't reject. So they
Challenge.
get the most out of it. And
Yeah.
their attitude really influences the people that come from the rest of the world, who don't have that total, sort of respect. But I mean, people do come with respect, but it's a tremendous, mix to have. It works wonderfully. And they learn about each other's cultures. I get them to model people when they go for lunch, because the Indians eat very differently. And so it's like, be with them and just do what they do. And and it's like, okay, you're using your right hand, to eat your lunch. And some people are like,
Yes.
oh,
Yes. So when are you training in India next?
next January and February.
And what course are you running there?
It's what we call an intensive. So I get people on different levels on the same program. So get some new people, get people doing master prac who may be modeling how we're training or modeling other people there, and get some people on the trainer training who might deliver some sessions on there. So it's we have a mixture.
A bit of a mix. And is it international flights to Kerala, or do you have to fly into Mumbai? Bombay. That's Bombay and Mumbai together. Do you fly into one of the major cities and then take a domestic flight down south?
I fly because I usually go to the UK first, and I fly to change at Dubai and fly to Kochi. You can get a direct flight to Kochi now from, I think, both France and the UK. Some people fly to Delhi, get a local flight. There's a number of ways of doing it.
Okay. So if you would like to blend a very high-level learning experience with experiencing one of the most diverse cultures in the world, then get yourself to Kochi in January next year.
And there's no shortage of experiences. The minute they get off that plane and they get in the traffic, they're in an experience.
It's another world. Yes.
Yes.
So what is next for yourself, Sue? You've written one book in particular, has been translated into 27 languages, I think I read, which is very impressive. You've got other works. Is it more? What's next for you? What does the horizon look like for Sue Knight?
Well, there was a kind of key point today, actually, coincidentally. People have a number of people over time have said, when are you going to write about provocative?
Oh.
And writing a book's a big undertaking. But that NLP at work has been huge for me. I mean, that book's been out God knows how many years now. It's in its 4th edition. It has a life of its own. And I thought, really, in honor of Frank, I feel, there's his book, but there's not a lot of other stuff. There's not many people. I spent 20 years with him.
Wow.
And I actually put it to my publisher this morning. I said, would you be interested if I were to do this? And he said, send me the spec. So it's
Today,
kind of
this is a today conversation.
just today.
Right. Okay.
Just today. Yeah. It's quite a challenge to think about how to write about it. It's so, it's so much about the whole way of being. But even his book is his history of it, and that's fascinating. That would be a big next step for me to do that.
Yes. Well, we will absolutely enjoy reading that. In fact, I'm going to seek out Provocative Therapy now with Frank and read that. I think that'll be a good learning. And I think sometimes, because anyone who has a somewhat of a sense of humor, I think, sometimes you have this sarcastic little voice in your head when someone's talking, and you hold yourself back from saying it. Maybe after the book, maybe I suppose it's predominantly used in the therapy space with provocative therapy. One or not is. It's almost how comedians get.
What do you mean by a therapy space?
Well, using provocative therapy, you have a client.
Call it that. I don't usually call it that, by the way.
Oh, what do you call it?
Well, I call it provocative coaching.
Provocative coaching.
We should start provocative sales.
Or coaching.
Provocative sales. Yes.
Provocative sales or coaching with humor. Once I changed the label, I thought it's like a number of things. You asked about working in the world. So when I learned logical levels, the top level was labeled spirituality.
Okay.
Well, I'd get close to that with a team of executives and think, and they're already saying, at the level of values, they're going, let's get a bit deep here. And I thought, dear God, I can't get spirituality with this lot. So that was in my, so I changed it to purpose.
Okay.
And then I did go provocative coaching, and then I decided to call it coaching with humor. And it was really interesting. It was like, when I first launched a practitioner, it was after a little while I called it a business practitioner. Nobody else had called practitioners a business practitioner at that point. It changed the clientele overnight. I went from people who should have been in therapy coming on the program to people who are holding down jobs but who wanted to develop themselves. Same with the coaching with humor. It made it accessible, and it meant, companies might fund people for it, whereas they might not fund them for therapy. They might think, oh God, what are we doing employing this person?
In my head, it's like, if it's called coaching with humor, it's almost like permission to use it, whereas provocative implies potential conflict. So within oneself, the confidence to use it, if it's labeled as provocative, I could imagine they could have their own inner conflict as to, am I going to go too hard? Is it going to be right? Where if it's done under the umbrella of humor, it's like, well, this is humorous. It's okay. It gives me permission to do it and to do it well.
I think the risk of the humor alone is that people think it's always got to be funny, and it hasn't. It does play a big part, but it's not always about being funny. So it was the only, like the counterbalance I had to sort of bring in some way, is to help people recognize it's bigger. That is a big part of it, but there's a lot more to it than that. And it is what you're saying. It's about, the things that you think and the things that people think. It's saying them to people. It's saying the unspoken things. I mean, speaking out what people would maybe be saying to themselves as their own kind of inner dialogue, and you speak it out.
Yes.
It's that speaking out that truth.
Getting that. Yeah. For me, the word permission is coming to my mind, because I think a lot of this is, again, big generalizations, but many people, once they have permission to do something, it's like they do it with volition. They do it with much more purpose and confidence.
Yes.
This is I'm enjoying this, Sue, and I'm conscious that it's 11:30 at night, and you're up
Oh my
tomorrow
God.
morning. Are you training tomorrow?
I'm going to the market in the morning.
Oh, a local
And I am
produce
training.
market.
I'm training in the afternoon. It's coffee in a French market in the morning.
Oh, with a croissant and some butter.
Of course, croissant and coffee. A noisette. Yes, I'll probably need the coffee in the morning. That's for sure.
Yes. Well, if anyone would like to get in contact with you, Sue, how can they find you, and what do you have coming up immediately in the next few months?
I've got online programs. If they look at my website, which is Knight as one, no dot and no, Knight.com,
Okay.
or it's email, it's sue@knight.com.
And they can get in contact with you, and if they've done NLP trainings, or if they haven't done NLP trainings, you'll be able to talk with them and help
Absolutely.
them progress with their learnings. And
They could come and experience France and train in NLP for a week at the same time.
oh, that'd be lovely.
I might do a provocative. I do often do an independent provocative training, but I might do that this year, maybe sometime in the summer. And then there's trainings there's trainings here in France, Italy, and India in person, and the rest online. Lots of things online.
The provocative therapy or provocative coaching, could that be done online, or is that an in-person?
No, it can be. I have done sessions online, not particularly long sessions, but yeah, I have done. Yeah.
Could you do a preview?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
What now?
Well,
No.
not right now, but we've got I mean, our audience is always hungry to learn new things, and especially in the NLP space. And if we were to do a preview, we'd probably get over 100 people there to come along and check it out. So
I think it's fascinating. I'd love to do it. Yeah. Well, watch it.
Depends what you mean by a preview. I mean, how long is a preview?
Oh, like an hour and a half max.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What you mean by a preview? I mean, how long's a preview?
I'm hearing The Matrix. Is that with?
Yeah, I'm here. I thought.
Is that you,
It's not
Cal?
here.
I think it was me.
Oh, because you have Facebook open.
Yeah,
because Facebook's delayed a second or two.
I was checking the chat
I
because
thought you
there's a
were
lot of
managing
people.
to reject something. This was some new skill I hadn't.
Yes.
Like, whoa, is this spooky?
Part of our double induction.
I was checking the chat because there was a lot of nice things being said about you, Sue, in the chat. Dr. Will Horton did a little shout out, and Keita as well said that you're one of her favorite trainings, and is starstruck that you're on the Unplugged podcast. So there was a lot of
Antika Maharan, yeah.
A lot of love in the chat for you and what we're talking about today.
Oh, I send my love back, because I just think it's incredible. That people, I feel I'm passing on what I've learned from some phenomenal people. I talked about Frank and talked about Jean, and it's just a treat to be able to pass that on to others. And lovely that people appreciate that. It's like taking people, to India. I love it in India. I love it here in France. I love it in Italy. And I love to bring people who appreciate that, who love it. I just want them to share that experience. And these remarkable communities. I'm a great fan and builder of communities.
Well, if you'd like to be part of Sue's community, and you're now part of our community, so
I am.
we hope to see more of you. Yes,
it's great fun.
We'd love to set that up.
It's worth staying up for.
Oh, we appreciate that. Thank you. We had, look, in all honesty and transparency, we had a few technical glitches before we started, and thankfully Sue was very patient with us, so we could work it out and end up where we are right now, which is live. So thank you again.
What'd be great, Sue, is if we look at some of the dates for your longer trainings and maybe set up the preview, and by preview I mean an hour and a half, 2 hours max.
It's getting longer. It's getting longer.
Well, I think as you start to provoke some people, there might be, but I think that would be a great way as well for our community to be able to get access to you and then look to come to your longer trainings as well. So I'd like to look at how we can set
Thank
them
you.
up.
Yes. I mean, the challenge for me with Australia is like when I pitch my times for online programs, it's
Yes.
quite tricky to
Someone
find
has
the
to miss
time.
out. It's either the
Exactly. It's
US
gonna
that
be,
misses out or Europe for us.
yes, exactly.
The good news
Well,
about
I've had a few dedicated Aussies who got up at 2 o'clock in the morning.
I was going to say the good news about Aussies is they don't really mind doing all-nighters. We've you know, some of the trainings we used to run were in the US and they were happy to stay up all night. So
Wow.
Yeah. Perfect. Again, Sue, thank you so much for joining us on the Unplugged podcast number 42. It's been an absolute pleasure having you share your knowledge with us in our community. We'll absolutely be in contact and have you back. Kallum, any final words?
no, just I think that the gift of when we get to talk to people like you, Sue, is to really look at what's outside of our awareness, because like Conor said, we've been inside of this, school of NLP here in Australia, and we are very isolated, not just by geography, but also in terms of where the other experts are. And often the other experts are teaching in different time zones, like you pointed out. So
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to remember the ancient Hawaiian saying, which is not all wisdom is in your school. And just having just this really short amount of time with you and seeing some of the things we don't know and how that can be incorporated to make us better. So again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very
staying
much.
up late.
Thank you very much for asking me. It's been great. I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed your company. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for watching the Unplugged podcast with Kallum and Conor from Connekt Coaching. Hope you loved this guest this week as much as we did. Cal?
What we wanted to remind you of is that if you wanted to steal our forever business model, which is perfect for all sorts of businesses around the world, to start to build extra revenue in your business right away, get instant access by clicking on the description and going into the link below, watching the 9-minute video where we unpack everything. See you next up.